Hey guys, this is Brad from Blue Nile Farm. Welcome to the channel. On this video, we're going to talk about how to do a thorough cleaning of a sprayer, and this is a Fimco, and it probably really doesn't matter what sprayer you actually have or whatever brand, they're relatively about the same. But I'm going to take you through the process of cleaning this thing up very thoroughly so we can get it to function correctly. Now, a lot of times, even if you buy a new sprayer, you may have these same problems, probably not as bad as this one, but you may have the same problems of dirty tank, dirty lines, and you may start it up and all of a sudden you're going to plug up right away for some contaminant that's actually in here. So I'm going to take you through the process of cleaning this sprayer tank up and the entire sprayer system itself, go over it and make corrections and fix it so you can be successful in your spraying endeavors. So stay tuned. So I made a prior video related to this, and this is a 55-gallon tank sprayer with a 10-foot boom with 7 nozzles that I purchased about 20 plus years ago from Tractor Supply, and it's made by Fimco. And I've thrown it in the weeds and I never really used it for all these years, and I dragged it out, and we did on the last video we went around here and looked at all the flaws and things that we had to correct. In this video I'm taking it to the next step, and we're actually going to clean this thing up, get it ready to go so we can put water in it and start cleaning this thing out, spraying it, and put it to use, because at the end of this video we should be ready to go in operating this tank and go out and start spraying some fields with some Roundup. So one of the first things you need to address is actually inside the tank, and I've always kept the cover on this, and my internal chamber of the tank itself was very, very dry. And I already did this already, but I wound up taking a vacuum after I took a little brush and tried to get all the dirt that was on the edges off. And then I wound up taking a vacuum and going in and sucking out all the debris. Now, Milwaukee has what they call air tips, and this was finally, because I bought these a while back, this thing really became handy because I can actually stick this down into the tank and hit all the corners and the edges, and I sucked out as much as I could. I think you're better off to actually suck out all the dry stuff before you actually spray water in here, because even if you try to shake it around and get rid of it, you're still going to have too much debris. This air tip made it really easy to get into the corners, and I was able to really suck everything out. So that's step one that I suggest you do, is get yourself a way of getting in here and hitting your corners and your areas, because the biggest problem is you can't really reach your hand in here. And with a normal if I was just using this end, sticking your hand in here, unless you have a really long extension, you're going to actually be sticking your hand and you're going to be cutting off the suction of the vacuum. So I wound up putting this on, and it made it such a great difference because I can reach this right down to the bottom of this tank, which is 55 gallons. So even if you had a larger tank, even up to 300 gallons, you may be able to use something like this where you can get in there and reach your area, because you're not going to go too far in with your hand. But if you have to do it with just a small vacuum, you're going to actually be shutting down the hole, having your arm in there. You're going to find it doesn't work so well. So these air tips worked out really good for me. And we're going to also use these air tips too, also in our lines, because I have smaller diameter air tips that may work real well. I have a 1/4 inch tip, and I also have a 1/2 inch tip, and this one is a 5/8 inch tip. But you know, these little tips can go right into the lines and maybe be able to suck up some debris if that's an issue. So it gives us an alternative on way of keeping these things clean. So this is step one. Get in here and clean this out as best you can, get it dry, and look in and see where you have. If you have any kind of moisture or stuff on the walls, I would get a scrub brush and scrub as much as you can out. But you do not want debris in here, because what's going to happen is it's going to flow through the system, and it may be caught by some of the screens. But because you're going to have, when we talk about your sprayers, you're going to have a mesh screen and the nozzle, and if that debris starts to plug up on that mesh screen, it's going to shut down that liquid. You hit the nozzle and you're kind of stuck, and you're going to be plugged up right away. So as much as you can will be your best friend right now to get this done, because we will flush the system completely, but we want to make sure that we have all the debris as much as possible out of here. And you know, the worst thing is I never had access to anything when this cap was on for 20 years, and I had mealworms in here, And I had other dirt that I had no idea how they got in here. And they must have traveled through the lines. And there's so much spider webs that are in the lines of this unit, and I'm going to show you here in a minute. So that's what we have to address, because there's a lot of critters that are crawling up and down your lines of your hoses, and you'll be surprised how much is actually in there. And I think all you need is one season for that to build up, and you're going to be kind of stuck. So it's very, very important that you keep these lines clean, because it'll transfer through the system out to your nozzles. So I wound up taking off the lines. And the reason I'm taking off the lines is because in every nozzle on this unit, there is a bunch of spider webs and debris that are at the end of each of these tips. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about first. Because what I want to do is, not only do I want to get access to these tips to clean them out, but I want to make sure there's no debris in my lines also, because if there's dirt and debris in the line, it's obviously going to go through when we introduce water and plug up our tips. So the cleaner I can make this, the better, and I want to make sure that I don't have this issue. Now, for most of you, you don't even have to go this far and as extreme as I am, but my unit sat for 20 years, this sprayer. So I know I'm having problems. But if you do see a problem, be aware that the best way to clean out your lines themselves is with air versus peeling through it, or water, as long as you didn't let it sit as long as I did. But because mine sat for so long, I'm going to really take the time to clean this up really good. So let me show you this tip. I'll point this up. So when you have these tips, there should be several different pieces to it. One, you should have the valve, which is this little white piece right here. That's the valve, or the nozzle. Then there should be some kind of rubber seal that's missing. And also on this one, there should be the mesh screen that should be embedded in here. But what is embedded in here is a little spider web. So I'm going to give you a close-up so you can see what I'm trying to show you. So do you see this? That's all debris. And that debris that's in here could easily come out and stick in and screw up our system. So we want to get rid of all that. And we're going to introduce air and blow out and clean that whole system out. So let me show you the second nozzle. It has a different issue, but the same issue also. So when we look at the secondary one, we also have the same issue in the sense that we have our nozzle. We'll take that off with our cap. So here's the nozzle and the cap. Here is a mesh screen that we need to remove. There was no seal that's in here to kind of keep everything watertight, but we're still having the same problem inside. So you can clearly see more debris. So I'm going to take this hose off, and then I'm going to start putting them back on as we go, because I want to make sure that they're not all mixed up. And I'm going to make sure I introduce air to all my hoses. So I got the air compressor, and this thing has a lot of power. I'm just going to cup it, and hopefully it'll blow it out. Kind of sticky. Okay, so we got this one completely cleared out, and it's open. So this one is actually finished, so we can stick our hose back on. And that's kind of our goal, clean everything out, because we're not going to flush this with water, don't get me wrong. But, you know, water, I want to make sure that when I do run water through it, that it's just going to take particles out. It's not going to be taking cobwebs and all this other stuff and maybe active spiders that are actually in here. I want to get this cleaned out completely. So the quicker I get it done, the quicker we're in action, and that's kind of my plan. Now, similar to that, I'm going to do the same thing with this hose. I'm going to try to blow out debris and see what's actually in here, and get rid of that. All right, so now we have a clean line. Everything's clean all the way through, and I'm just going to reassemble this back on, and then we'll be good to go. Definitely goes back on a lot easier than coming off. There's no doubt about that. So So when we get down here, this right here is where our T actually goes in. There's actually a nut on the end of it. So once you have one of the lines off, you can actually take these apart, and it might be a little easier to get them apart. So don't be afraid to take them apart and put them back on, and set them up in their container and just thread this back on. Then they'll be locked in, and then you won't have any problems. Everything's very user-friendly with this Fimco stuff, and if one breaks, they're easily replaceable. Call Fimco to get you all the parts you need. You know, that's one thing I have to say about this company is you can get parts for everything. And I don't care how old this machine is, I can get the parts for it. So this is actually snug down. It doesn't have to be super tight. And I'm going to put our hoses back on, at least this one, because we know that this is actually clean. And like I say, they go on so much easier, but they're a bear to come off. And again, they sat for a long time, so I'm not surprised. So I had to pry on them and really get them to come off, but it was worth it. So this thing's on, and it'll be snugged up. Well, I'm going to spend my night getting all the hoses off this unit, but I'm going to show you some of the tools that'll help you when you do take apart the hoses. One is, if you got a Harbor Freight in your area, go get these hose pullers. This will help you out a lot to kind of get on it and kind of move it around. Again, the silicone blaster, shoot it in between the plastic and the fitting, the rubber in the fitting, and that'll actually loosen it up and actually help you pry it apart. Also, get yourself a tool that's not real sharp that you can actually use. This is actually for getting out gaskets. But, you know, you can get a tool that you can get into that, around that hose and the fitting, and actually loosen it up and pry it a little bit and get that silicone in there, and it'll actually help you prying this out. Because the way these are set, they basically have like 3 rings to it, and once they start sliding through the rings, it's easy, but you got to kind of work it and loosen it up a bit before it will come out free. So those are some of my tidbits on keeping this clean, and you know, getting to those hoses, and that'll make your life a lot easier. And I suggest you kind of use them to your benefit, because you know, if you got to take the hoses off, it is kind of hard. At least for me, it is, because it's been 20 years. I also want to add this. You know, you may not have to deal with these lines, and unless you have an issue where almost every valve nozzle has a spider web and it's a big mess, generally you may not have to go this route at all. I'm doing it because, like I say, it's been so long, and I'm just being very preventative, because I had so much different debris that was in here. Not a lot, but I'm seeing that there's a lot of reasons why things are plugged up, and I want to eliminate the problems when I get this thing together, because I'm putting a lot of money into getting this thing relatively new, with new meshes, new valves, new nozzles, and I want to make sure everything works as it should without any problems. And first rule of thumb on these units is, if you don't have a pump problem, you need to be clean. And cleanliness is next to godliness when it comes down to a sprayer, because the more debris that's in here, the more likely you're going to get plugged up, and you're going to be very frustrated. So to make this work, make sure it's clean, and that's what we're doing today. That's why it's very important that you kind of take some of these steps to make sure that your unit is good. So I want to completely doing all the lines and the connections to the nozzles where they're going to spray out. We cleaned all that off the back end. Then I detach this line, which actually comes and puts the pressure to the boom. This is where the water flows and puts the pressure to the boom, to the back. We clean that line out. This line here we're going to talk about in a second, and this actually comes from the tank and goes to our pump, and this is the out from the pump going into the pressure regulator, and which in turn would send this line puts the water to the boom, and anything that's extra that we regulate will go back into the tank and also act like our agitator. So that's kind of our little setup right now. We're just trying to clean the lines and make sure all our connections are there before we take this out and test it. But, you know, for me to do so, I wanted to make sure everything's clean and connected properly. Now, there's one major repair that we have to do, and that's underneath the unit. So we're going to kind of flip this up, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. And I took this out already. It actually connects to this piece. Now, do not take this plastic piece off. That is where the hose goes. Leave that be. But what you need to do is look at this assembly, which was actually here. And this assembly is like a filter. And you can see this is just loaded with cobwebs. But the reason why we have to replace it is because the filter here is actually split. If you have a split filter, you have to buy the entire assembly. They don't piece it apart. It's like $40. But this is what keeps your machine actually clean. So you take off this filter assembly that controls the screen, and all I did is unscrew this. Now this also serves as another important piece. Not only is it a filter, but the piece that's actually here on this end is actually a ball valve, and that's what turns your water flow on and off from your tank to your pump. So it's very important that you're able to control this. So if you wanted to drain this completely, all you have to do is unscrew this ball valve, and basically you can drain your entire tank. So this is kind of where it serves. It's a screen, and it is your on and off switch from your pump to your tank, and that's very important. So what happened when I was doing my evaluation was the ball valve part broke off, and so we're going to replace that in the whole assembly, and it came together, but I did buy the separate piece. This is exactly what the assembly actually looks like completely, and this is the ball valve with the nozzle. So this actually can unscrew, and it's a separate piece, and it also is sold separately. But this piece is what we're going to put on right now, and I'm going to take it apart. And I want to show you also how the screen actually looks, because there's night and day difference between that old screen and this screen. So huge difference. And there's a washer in the bottom here to keep everything together. So keep all this clean, and this is something you're going to be maintaining all the time when you're taking this on and off. So this actually goes in the bottom of the filter. Keeps everything together. We're actually up on the top. So this ring is what actually seats when you screw this piece together. So be very careful when you take it on and off. Because like I say, if there's a part that breaks on this, you have to replace the whole entire thing. You know, this part you can buy separately, but this entire unit you have to have. And there's an arrow to this to let you know that this is the end. It actually goes to this valve here. So I'm just going to take this off and then screw it on, and then I'll reapply everything after that. And once we start running this through the machine, we'll see if we need leaks, what our leaks are, and how we want to deal with it. And I'm going to assume that it's going to be like a Teflon tape situation when things aren't fitting properly. So I'm just going to get this snug, and then we'll be good with that. We'll leave it right there. We'll see how it leaks, and we'll set this filter back in next. And generally the filter should be aiming downward when you put this together, and do not make it super tight. Just make it just snug, because if you over tighten this and it's plastic, you may break it and crack it, and you're stuck buying another one. So I'm going to have to take the broken valve off here. It's on a clamp, and then we'll put this in, and then that piece will be complete. So the bottom end will be done. We did the booms, we did the tank. So the next thing we're going to be working on is making our pump, put the pump together, and get it hooked up to the machine. That'll be our next step. So I want to show you what it looks like underneath, you know, because talking about and showing you are two different things. So this is the sub-assembly itself, and you should have your screen that's inside here aiming downward. Right here is that attachment where the shutoff is that I just connected lightly here, and this gets connected to this hose. The reason why I've been pulling hoses, and I want to show you exactly why, is because when you look inside this hose, it is plugged with that white stuff is pure cobwebs and like a, I don't know, nest for spiders. So that has to come out. It has to be completely clean, because that is running through our system, It will cause us nothing but huge problems. So that line and the other line that goes to the agitator are the last two lines that I have to clean. And I can't wait to see how bad that is. But this goes to the bottom of the tank. And I'm actually going to remove both of those lines and make sure that that is completely clear. So we're going to be in good to go, that we know that our entire system is clean in all the hoses. And I've blown every hose out, both big and small. So feeling pretty good about this. So this is our next step, is to remove those two hoses from the tank so we can have access to blow them out. So I wound up taking the entire hose off, which is right here. And this whole hose, the entire thing, is loaded with cobwebs from the beginning all the way to the end. I mean, it's amazing. Probably a good 8 inches of cobwebs in here. So we're going to blow this out, and we're going to blow this valve out. And at least we'll know that's clean, because that would only go into our filter and cause us nothing but trouble. So that's the first thing that needs to get cleaned out. And it would have been a major problem if we didn't discover this, because I don't think it would have gave us a clean flush as we were flushing out. We'd never get all that out of there. So this is the best way we can do it. And air is our best tool. So we're going to knock that out right now. So this is what it looks like, all that little gooey stuff. It's all very sticky, but it doesn't seem like much, but it's all compressed and it was in our hoses. But that would definitely plug you up. Hate to say it. So we went through the whole machine. We did the entire hose system. Has all been cleaned, blown out. All the nozzle ends have been cleaned and blown out, and our tank is clean. So realistically right now, our next step is to get our pump hooked up, put that together. I need to get two fittings for the in and out of the pump, and then we can hook this together and we can take it out on the tractor, get it up toward the house, fill this up and see if we have any leaks, and try out our sprayer, and we'll start flushing it, making sure everything works the way it should be before we wind up putting any nozzles or screens into this. So one thing I decided to do when I was looking at my tank is that I started to notice that my hoses, my main hoses that go in my pump, my roller pump, basically are kinked or bent. In this one here, for example, when you see flat spots in your hoses, in several spots, what's going to happen is this could be a restriction of the chemicals going into your sprayer. And what's going to happen is you can actually damage your pump. So you want to make sure that these are completely open. I can't even get my finger in here because it's crimped so tight. So my suggestion to you is when you see stuff like this, replace your hoses and make them more user-friendly. I think that'll make a big difference. And do this before you run your pump. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to change these out a little bit. I'm also going to put a quick attach on these as well, so I can uncouple my roller pump from my from the lines and make it a lot easier. Because during the winter time, and I live in northeastern Ohio where we have a lot of snow and ice, last thing I want to do is keep my roller pump on on my sprayer, because the odds are it's going to freeze. So I'd like to get it off. I kind of take care of it and keep it indoors so it doesn't have any problems. So, but I'm going to show you how we do that after we wind up cutting these. So we're going to probably make a little bit of extra length. So I wound up going to Tractor Supply, grab myself some hose made for sprayers, and that's what you basically need. This is 3/4 inch, and we'll put this on. So I'm going to cut this a little bit longer, and that gives me a little bit more room to play when we put the little quick attach nozzles on. And I'll show you that after we get this together. So now that we have our new hoses that are going to go to our roller pump, now we have to select the right roller pump. Most of you guys are going to go out to a box store, not know anything about roller pumps, and go out and ask the retail store, hey, I need a roller pump to pump my sprayer, and they'll go out on the shelf, grab you one, and 99.9% of the time, most of you guys will go out and buy one of these little cast pumps. And what's happening is that you need to realize that a cast pump with certain chemicals do not work so well, and they will eat up the internal workings of these pumps, and they're going to break down on you within 1 or 2 years, especially if you don't take care of them well. So you need to be aware of that. You know, what I'm talking about as far as chemicals goes is that most of you guys will spray glyphosate and other chemicals that are deemed corrosive, and that's going to hurt your pump very much so. So what I suggest you do is shop around and get the best pump possible that's going to last you the longest. And I like stainless ones because I'm going to do a lot of glyphosate, and they're designed for sprayers for herbicides and pesticides, and they're going to be better longevity. They'll last 10 times longer. They cost a little bit more, but you know, if you're going to go through pumps every couple of years versus 10 to 15 years, I definitely would take a roller pump that's made out of stainless versus one made out of cast. So keep that in the back of your mind, because if you're not pumping, you're not working, and it's just going to cost you more money in the end. So that's step one. Number two that you need to understand about a roller pump is that they are bidirectional, meaning they go clockwise and they go counterclockwise. And when you order online, which is what I did recently, the ag store kept sending me the wrong roller pump. So let me explain how this works. When you have a tractor, your PTO shaft, which powers these roller pumps, they all go clockwise. So when you buy a roller pump to pump, you need one that generally goes counterclockwise, and that's because they work together in the right direction. But if they're both going clockwise, one's doing one thing, one's doing another, and you're not pulling the solution from the tank, you're actually pulling it from the out going in. So what I'm trying to say is, if you are buying a roller pump, you need to buy the counterclockwise model. Delavan, for example, they have different models out there. They all have different numbers, so what they are. But they have one that's deemed R version, like a 6900 DSS-R. That means reverse rotation. That is a clockwise pump, and you do not want that. You want the basic 6900 DSS. That is not counterclockwise, or it's not clockwise. So when you look at the pump itself, you know the direction of travel based on when you're looking at the shafts. And when I look at this shaft, this is an R model, because you can see the rotation. There's an arrow that shows it goes clockwise. Whereas if you buy the 6900 DSS plain without the R, this one shows it goes counterclockwise. This is the correct pump for a sprayer that's run by PTO. So know that going into it. So always buy a counterclockwise roller pump, and you'll save yourself a lot of aggravation. And again, try to get one that's made for herbicides and pesticides that are corrosive. And that's something that I have other videos on where I kind of cover both of the topics of direction as well as what they're made out of. It'll save you a lot of grief and a lot of money down the road, especially if you're going to utilize your sprayer. So that's all I'm going to leave on the pumps. So now we're at the point of we're going to connect our roller pump to our hoses. So let me show you what we're going to do with that. So now that we have the roller pump on, there's some improvements that we've done to this unit that I kind of want to cover, just so you guys are familiar with it. So one is they have a regular cap that just comes in by itself, and an adaptation that Fimco came up with, which I kind of like, is that they created a new cap, and it comes with a measuring cup that's actually part of the lid. Also, you can flip up this section and actually put your hose in here, so you don't have to dangle your hose inside the tank, which obviously a lot of dirt and debris from the hose actually comes in and contaminates your tank. So this is a great way to manage your water and your measuring all at once. So I kind of like that. It was an investment. It was like, I want to say it was like $13 just for the lid, and I don't care because it's worthwhile. Second thing I did is I finally changed the gauge. I didn't like the gauge I had before. The gauge went up to 400 pounds. That was the original gauge. This one goes up to 100, and this one is also filled with fluid. So basically it's going to be more accurate. I'll kind of give you a shot of what that looks like. So there's the new gauge. Goes up to 100 psi, and most of my range is going to be between 40 and 60. So it's the perfect gauge for this unit, plus it's big, and I like that. Now, let's talk hoses. So there's the roller pump. It's actually hooked up to the PTO. Here is the bar that basically keeps the roller pump from flipping around. Make sure you have that secured and chained. And one thing that I did is I added the new hose on, and then I put quick attach PVC type couplers to this. So why that is set up that way is so when I am done spraying and I want to wash out my pump, or say it's winter time and before the winter snow comes in and freezes, I can take this pump completely off and take it in the house and keep it dry. And that does a lot to be said for doing that. So I treat that roller pump just like I would if it was my control module for my balers. I definitely do not leave it outside, and that's one of those things that you may want to do as well. So now my hoses are a little bit long down here, and the one side is definitely drooping a little bit, and I have a little bit extra length, but what I didn't want to do is crimp at all any of my hoses, and that's what was happening before, is they were getting flat spots because they're getting crimped. So I want that water and the solution to flow accurately and not bind. So that's what we've done so far. So again, roller pump, quick attach, and we're all set. So now that our pump's hooked up, I'm going to show you how to basically clean out your sprayer by running water through it. And the first thing you're going to wind up doing is taking off all your nozzles, your mesh. You want basically all your lines clear. You don't want anything obstructing the water flow from this. It's not like it's going to spray out, it's just going to force itself out. So I removed all the little mesh screens. I took off all my nozzles. They're off. You know, and our pump's hooked up, everything's ready to go. We filled this up with 20 plus gallons of water. So we're just going to run the water through the system. And the goal here is to force any kind of contaminants through the tank out the nozzles and run and clean out our lines. That's really what we're going to do. And you're going to kind of do this kind of thing when you clean out your sprayer anyway. This is a good thing to do even after you use it. So this is just a practice and show you how it's done. Another thing too is we'll run through and we'll clean this separately by running just the agitator, where we'll get up to 540 RPMs, and we won't run through the boom. We might just set this up where the agitation will actually start to churn our water through the system, and so it's kind of the tank's cleaning itself too. And then eventually we can either just disconnect the lines and let the water just come out on the ground, or we run it through the boom. The other screen that you have to remove is actually between the tank and the pump. It's that 50 mesh screen that I showed you. Looks like an oil filter canister. Take that out too, because again, you don't want to have any blockage. You want all that contaminants to completely go right through the system. So I'm going to start the tractor right now. I'm going to turn on the pumps and the roller pump, and you're going to see actually the water coming out. And this is one way to clean out your pump, and it's probably one of the easiest ways to do it besides just opening it up and go. You want to clean these lines, and that's what this is all about. Clean the lines completely with no debris. If you would leave your nozzles in your mesh and there is debris in here, all you're going to do is plug up your system, and that's not what we want to do. So now you can see we're running our pump, we're running our system. All the water's coming through the lines and there's no obstructions. So we're just going to let this run for a while and clean itself out. Now if I would turn this off and the boom is shut off, what's going to happen is we're going to just be working, our pump is just going to work the tank, like I said, working on the agitator, at least on this system that Fimco has. So when this thing is not running, basically the agitator is working. So on the Fimco, if I actually turn this off, meaning straight down, because the boom's going to work whether they're down or they're straight up. But when it's straight flat, what's happening is we're churning only through the roller pump and the tank and just cycling through, and it's actually mixing. And this is another way of cleaning your tank out and kind of cleaning out, make sure your lines are clear. But right now, like I say, we're just going to run this a while, then I'm going to completely drain the tank completely, and then we'll be done with this. And you can do this several times over till the point where you know that your tank is clean. But you now know that the roller pump's working, the water is circulating, and you're getting results at the end. And that's really what we're trying to do, making sure there's no obstructions and we're having clean water going through. There's a couple other ways we can drain this. We can drain it by taking our quick coupler off and let it drain on the ground. Sometimes just removing this filter that's in here and just unscrewing it will let all the water come out. And that's kind of what I'm going to do right now. Just unscrew this. And watch out, because you have a O-ring, you don't want to lose this. And just let the water drain out, and at least you know your tank's clear and it'll work out good. But that's really the basic way of cleaning this out. So another thing I want to mention real quick is once you're done draining your tank and you get that taken care of, and you put your filter plastic piece back on where you were draining, disconnect when you take the sprayer off the machine, tractor, make sure you disconnect your roller pump and get oil running through it and get it to a dry place, because you don't want it to sit for a long period of time with water in your tank, especially if it's a cast pump, because what's going to happen is going to create rust and cause you problems. But the best thing you can do is get this pump removed, oil it, and set it aside, and you'll be good to go the next time. And that's really what's going to save you, is protection of that pump. You know, one of the greatest complaints everybody has is with the pump. And it doesn't matter if you have a stainless pump or cast pump. Just take care of your pump, and that is the heart and soul of getting this pump to run. It doesn't matter how fancy of a rig you purchase. No pump, no sprayer. It really that simple. I also want to mention too, when we're talking about roller pumps and I'm talking about oil, the oil I'm talking about mostly is like cooking oil, canola oil, or vegetable oil. That's probably the cheapest and the easiest and safest thing that you can put in your roller pump, because it'll basically just lubricate, and it's basically food grade, so it's not going to be a contaminant to your spraying or what you're putting down the ground. Now you can also use light oil, like oil that you'd use for air tool oil, very light. But I suggest you use the food grade oil, because it's probably a lot safer and a lot easier and probably a lot cheaper. You only need 1 or 2 ounces. You don't need a lot. Put it on the end and take your pump and spin it, you know, the direction it's supposed to spin. So it should be going counterclockwise, so spin it counterclockwise, and you should have enough lubrication in your pump to set it aside till next time. And that should be a common plan of doing this. Now, when you also have a new pump, you should actually put oil in it first before you even hook it up to your sprayer, because that is going to also lubricate it beforehand. Most of these pumps do not need to be primed. The Delavans are basically pre-primed, so basically once you pump them in, it'll suck the water right into it. But if you have one that needs to be primed, that just means you have to put water into the line before you turn on your pump, so it kind of will start the process. Other than that, the pump's relatively very simple. It's pretty much plug and go and easy to maintain. So these are some tips, some of the things you should be aware of, and I'm going to cover another video specifically on that, and I'm going to show you how it's done. So again, these are just things I want you to be aware of now, so you're not going in blind when you're hooking up a pump. You know that there's a few other steps you need to do. So if you're interested in finding out more in depth about putting oil in the roller pump, stay tuned, because I'll have another video out there discussing that in the near future, if not now, once you see this video. So remember, once you're done cleaning this tank out and you start looking inside and you see little specks, again, use these air tips from Milwaukee if that's something, or something that's close to it. And I'm going to tell you, these things are so handy just to reach into this tank and suck up the debris with the shop vac. This is probably one of the best tools out there to use to do that specifically, you know, because a lot of times you can't get your hand in there to wipe it, and this works out really good. So that's pretty much it I'm going to cover as far as cleaning this tank out and clean your lines out. You know, the best approach would be to replace all the hoses. The best approach would be every year to run this clean, make sure it's clean before you use it. And take your time and take care of your sprayers, and you're going to have good big results that you're going to be looking for down the road. Because if you don't take care of these sprayers, they're not going to take care of you, and it's going to cause you a lot of problems. Now I want to show you the tips. So what I wound up doing on my nozzles is that I wound up putting in 50 mesh, which is a little bit more coarse, and that's what I'm going to use for my glyphosate. And I also have these Venturi nozzles. They're made by Greenleaf. Both are Greenleaf made, and I'm going to use them. They have less drip, and they're made for glyphosate. So my plan is to put about 15 gallons to the acre down, but we're going to have to kind of figure out, see how this sprays first, and then I'm going to have to calibrate it. And we'll do that at another time as far as video goes. But right now I've completely cleaned out my tank. Everything is done. It's run through spraying. We're going to run through and do a test spray right now just to make sure everything's working. And I'll show you that. And then after that, you know, I'll be working on calibrating this and getting it ready to take out in the field. But I just wanted to show you some of the aspects you need to do to clean up these tanks and get them ready to go. And I feel that I'm ready to go with this tank right now, just to get started. And I'm really happy with some of the improvements that we've made. And it's finally going to start to get this back to use. Now, the one thing I am going to do this that I don't have yet is I'm going to get a spray gun for it. And I'm going to get their Pro Gun, made by Fimco. And it's made for glyphosate and other corrosive chemicals. It's the best one that they have, and it's about a 22-incher. I'm going to get that, and I'm going to plumb it in between my gauges and my pressure valves. So everything kind of, it just fits in there kind of in the middle. And that's just an extra piece that I have to order. But I'm going to tell you that this is going to be a great little tank to run around the fence rows on, and maybe small fields like a couple acres that I don't want to bring a big sprayer out. This is what this is going to be used for. And then if I have to empty any of this, I'll probably put it into a hand pump sprayer or something so I can spray it, or I get a spray gun and use that to empty this out. But bottom line is this, guys, do not run these tanks dry. If you do, you're going to be in big trouble because you're going to wreck your roller pump. So be real cognizant of that, because you do not want to burn up your pumps. Do not let it dry, because I mean, it doesn't take much for these pumps to toast out if they're running dry. So do not do that. It's the best thing I can tell you as far as the pumps go. So I'm out here right now filling the tank, and I'll tell you, this hose is right over the top. It's not digging in. You can see it's right here at the top. I'm just letting it do its own thing, and it's not falling into the tank. We're going to let this fill probably about a third of the way. And then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to put down the booms, turn it on, and let's see this thing spray at the 110 degrees that they're set up for. And we'll get the overlap and make sure everything's working well. You know, when you go out in the field, you want to make sure everything's working properly, and this is our test to do it. You always want to test to make sure everything's working with clean water. You don't want to go out there and do it and spray your glyphosate, kind of waste it. So that's kind of my ideas as far as trying to do this properly. So show you what it's like once we're filled, and we'll start the sprayer. All right, guys, we got our boom set up. We got everything on. I'm going to put the boom down. I'm hoping my pressure's where it's supposed to be, but we might have to regulate that now that we have our nozzles on, because that's something that's a totally different deal there. And I'm going to just flip it up so air gets pushed through and any water gets pushed through, and it's going to start coming out the nozzles. So I'm going to turn on the PTO, and let's see where we're at, and I'm going to get up to 540, because that's going to be what we're going to run on. So right now, according to my gauge, we're at 30 psi, and you can see we're getting a complete overlap on all our spray nozzles. You'll see a couple drips here and there, but it's working the way it's supposed to. And we're going to make sure that everything's clean and everything's running the way it's supposed to run. So we're going to be very accurate when we go out in the field and use this. So I'm going to let it run, make sure there's nothing getting clogged up. I'm going to check this one a little bit because I see it dripping a little bit more than I'd like, and then we'll kind of evaluate it. But this is where we're at, and all looking good so far. So the reason why I'm having leaks is the Venturi nozzle that I purchased do not fit with the older conventional round style cap nozzle system. So, and a lot of the reason why that is because when we talk about sprayers and we talk about different designs of the nozzles, these are more designed for the T-jet round 80-degree flat spraying nozzles. And what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to get bigger coverage. So I'm looking at 110-degree coverage. I'm looking at getting less drift. So I want to upgrade my system, and that's why I went to the Venturis. But they're not compatible to this. So we're going to have to change the entire line, which is what I have in my hand here, and I'm going to cover in another video. So this is kind of where we're at today, kind of give you a basic concept of cleaning up your tanks, how to use them and get them cleaned out. And I have to now do a little more upgrades to this. Basically, I'm going to have a new sprayer time I'm finished. So I'm going to replace other hoses that are on this unit because I'm going to replace the entire boom line. And at this point, there's only like 3 hoses left to change, so I might as well do it all. And I'm going to have a completely new system. And the reason also that I should change these lines anyway, this is a 20-year-old system. I'm thinking some of the rubber is starting to decay and break off, and it kind of floats around my tank. So by getting new lines, I shouldn't have these problems. So it just makes better sense. Again, you know, this is just a little bit of good maintenance, and it makes a big difference. But this is going to be a whole new professional setup. So stay tuned in the next video because we're going to cover changing over to this, and we're going to talk about nozzles and selecting nozzles so you can get out there and spray, as well as replacement of this entire boom. So until next time, see you guys later. Hopefully that video helps you out, and I'll talk to you guys soon.